This is big breaking emergency news. We now have Joe Biden signing an emergency executive order for our national security. The U.S. government and the Biden administration is signing an executive order right now because they're extremely worried about a potential DNA bioweapon being released on the public. They're also worried that the same information that is being compromised could be used to implement internet shutoffs and major cyber attacks. It could allow countries like China to enter backdoors into our country and take our data and use it against us. That's what the Biden administration just signed an executive order for. This is happening right now, and you need to be prepared and getting ready for this because they are setting the grounds for something big to happen. Okay, they are getting prepared. They are saying for a potential DNA bioweapon to be released, and they are now taking steps, preventative measures against it. From specifically, they're worried that countries like China are now harvesting U.S. American data, even genomic data, and they are now manipulating it and potentially creating bioweapons that could be released and could be used to target specific individuals and even entire populations. That is what we are being warned of right now. And the Biden administration, Joe Biden, is signing an executive order for this right now. So we need to be getting prepared. We could see something along these lines being released very soon. If they're signing an executive order for this, they're getting ready for it. We could see something related to it soon, and we could see China blamed for it, and China could be the blame for it, but we also could see a setup to blame China for this as well. They're worried that things even like individual specific bioweapons could be created, so it's a release of a pathogen, a bacteria, something along those lines that is genetically altered to only affect this certain individuals all the way down to their DNA and their genomic sequence. Okay, and they're saying that this data has been compromised from major leaks, like things like 23andMe. There's been a major 23andMe hack, and there were tens of thousands, admittedly, of people that had their DNA released from this. Okay, and when you have a small release like this, it opens up the branches and the genomic data for all the people's relatives, close relatives as well, and you can create a major map with this. And we know that probably even more data was compromised from this. So the Biden administration has signed an executive order for this. They are worried that this could lead to cyber attacks. This could lead to shutdowns of global communications and American data servers being transferred over in foreign lands. Okay, they could stop data around the world. That's what they're worried about right now, and they're signing an executive order for this. So let's dive into the details here really quick. Hit that like, hit that subscribe for me. I'm posting multiple videos every single day. I posted a video earlier today. Check that out after this video. But you can see here it says new Biden order would stem the flow of American sensitive data to China. All right, and they're worried that this could be used to make a genomic sequence DNA weapon, and they're worried that China is potentially working on it and could release something along these lines. All right, you can see here it says the plan takes aim at a controversial practice that privacy advocates have long criticized as an enabler of mass surveillance, whether in the United States or in other countries. It says the order is designed to block data brokers and other companies from selling access to large stores of geolocation, genomic, and other sensitive personal information to buyers in, quote, countries of concern such as China, Russia, and Iran. It says now that vast stores of personal genomic, geolocation, health, and financial data are available commercially, officials are concerned that foreign adversaries can simply buy the information in bulk from brokers without users' knowledge or consent. There are no laws that would stop a genomics company from contracting with a Chinese firm to sequence its genetic specimens, for instance. Quote, in China, they're using mass data collection for surveillance and repression, said James A. Lewis, a technology policy expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Quote, and the concern is they might use Americans' data for malicious purposes. It goes on to say, this is an article out of mainstream news, The Washington Post. The most sensitive categories include people's DNA and biometric data, as well as computer keyboard use patterns. They are trying to ban companies like 23andMe from sending their data to China, selling it to China, having their servers in China, because they have a lot of their data stored in these foreign locations and the governments can easily access it and have backdoors into it by law in a lot of these places. All right, so they're trying to stop that, and especially American DNA genomic sequences. They're extremely worried that China is using this and manipulating this to potentially malicious purposes like DNA bioweapons. Specifically, China is a very homogenous country. Okay, people share a lot of the same DNA in China. Okay, it's essentially an ethnic state. Everyone there is Chinese, essentially, for the most part, the majority of people. Okay, so they could essentially, this is hypothetical, a country like China could create a DNA weapon that only affects people from Eastern European descent, ethnicity, okay, or from African ethnicity. And essentially, theoretically, they could protect people in China. They wouldn't even be affected by this at all. This is the theory that we are working with here, and they are signing executive orders to prevent this from happening. They're worried about it at the highest levels. I've been talking about this for at least 6 months, going on a year. These DNA weapons that they are working on, and especially since 23andMe has been hacked, this is a major national security risk to our country, and now the White House is responding to this, right? And you can see here it says, intelligence officials say they believe Chinese companies are trying to acquire DNA from Americans. All right, and it says, quote, genomic data will provide the blueprint for future biotech products and capabilities to grow the economy. But in the wrong hands, it could also be weaponized to create engineered pathogens or misused to identify and target individuals, said Michelle Rozo, vice chair of the congressionally mandated National Security Commission on Emerging Biotechnology. All right, this is what people are warning of in our government, that are on these national security commissions in our government. She said this could, quote, be weaponized to create engineered pathogens or misused to identify and target individuals. She also said, quote, genomic data is a strategic resource and the United States needs to treat it as such. All right, so that is what these national security commissioners are warning of in our governments, and they are getting ready for something big. So you need to be getting ready too. You need to be prepared too. You need to be ready. They could potentially release something. Not saying they have, not saying they will, but the cards are there. And when the government is getting prepared for something like this, we need to have it on our radar and be watching them and wondering what they're doing, what's really going on behind the scenes here. Who's really releasing this? Where would this really come from? Who is actually to blame for this? What countries would this really come from? Who's really funding it? Because we know things could be very suspicious and very sketchy when it comes to things like this. We've seen this in the past before in our country just recently. So please hit it up for me down there and make sure you are getting prepared and getting ready. We could even see something like this released for our food supply. We could see a DNA genomic weapon pathogen, GMO altered pathogen that only affects certain animals in our food supply or certain crops. We could see things like this released, certain diseases, pathogens potentially escape, quote unquote escape, be released, and we could see major wipeouts of our food supply. Can you imagine if there was a pathogen that wiped out the corn? Right? Our entire food supply is based off corn. Chickens eating corn. They're eating corn. Their feed is corn. Their chick feeds corn. All this stuff is corn. And this is why it's critical to be growing your own food, working on your own garden, and trying to produce these things yourself, because it could hit the fan. Any moment, we could see these things happen, and the government is getting ready for it to happen. And they sign this executive order. That means they're serious about it. They also sign an executive order for these cyber attacks on ports, right? That's also coming very soon as well. They're getting us ready and psychologically prepped for something along those lines too. So make sure you're getting prepared. This chick's here, real sleepy. All right, we had her lights off, so she was already sleeping, and I picked her up, and my hands are nice and warm, so she's just conking out here. All right, so make sure you are getting prepared. Make sure you are getting stocked up and getting ready. All right, because they could release a pathogen. If it wipes out the corn, the cows aren't eating, the hogs aren't eating, the chicks aren't eating. That's what they all eat, whether it's organic or not. Even if you buy organic feed for them, it's still, that's what they're eating. 90% of chicks. All right, so start feeding your chickens your scraps. All right, they can, if you have a small flock, 5-6 animals, you have a decent sized family of 4, all your scraps can essentially feed these chicks. Right, we fed 8 chicks exclusively off scraps before for weeks. All right, when we were running low on food, we were just out in the middle of nowhere. It costs a bunch of money to go back. All right, you can feed them for weeks on stuff like this, on just your food scraps, your dinner scraps, all the stuff you're throwing away. The chicks can eat most of it. All right, so start getting prepared, start getting ready. Thank you guys. Go check out my video I posted earlier. All right, the sheriff's warning about this new law that was just passed, and it's going to create chaos. All right, so thank you guys, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.